Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and while 99% of my content revolves around Star Citizen, today I'm going to take the small risk of branching out a little bit, because for the past week or so I've been at times literally knee-deep in Helldivers 2. So if you are only here for SC content, I do totally get that, and I've got a video primed for next week back in familiar territory. But if you would like to find out more about this game and see if it's something for you, then grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, and then let's get into it. Helldivers 2 is a squad-based horde shooter, where as an elite warrior of Super Earth, you are called upon to spread managed democracy to the bug and robot enemies of mankind. By killing them, basically. Someone like Astropub will do a far better job of explaining the lore, so if you're interested in that side of things, then please do check out his video on the subject, which I'll link in the video description down below. But for the TLDR version, it's basically a Starship Troopers game without the official branding. After completing what is honestly one of the best tutorials I've played through recently.
What a fine soldier, your brother in arms, a battle-forged bond that could never be replaced, until now.
Then you'll get your cape, the keys to your new starship, and a license to go bug or bot hunting. You can use the map to navigate around different planets that are the subject of Super Earth's liberation efforts, selecting from a variety of missions against the Terminid bugs in the Galactic East or the bots in the Galactic West. And the missions themselves are definitely a strong point of the game, with good areas of consistency, but also a decent variety of objectives. You'll drop into each one in your bullet-shaped drop pods, and will have a core objective that you need to complete. These range from killing a certain number of enemies or eradicating bug nests, to evacuating human settlers to launching ICBMs. And a lot of the time you'll have to operate terminals in a Dance Dance Revolution style, or work with your squad mates to interact with the objective at multiple points, all while holding off waves of enemies. Alongside the main objectives of the mission, you'll also find sub-objectives across the map, closing up additional nest sites or taking down rogue relay stations. These will net you additional XP and rewards if you complete them, and some will give you bonuses for the mission. Reconnecting a radar relay will give you a more detailed map readout, for instance. However, for each mission, you're against the clock, with a range between 15 and 40 minutes to complete your major objectives and extract via your Pelican dropship. Definite Redeemer vibes here, by the way. So you'll have to think carefully about whether you have the time to complete all the side quest stuff, and still make sure you make it to the main objective and extract. A good few times things have got quite intense as we dawdled getting to the main quest, and then we got bogged down in a heavy firefight, eating into our time. Dying isn't the end of the world, as for each teammate on the mission you'll have 5 respawns, giving you 20 if you're a full squad. Your squad mates can redeploy you if they're still up, or it'll happen automatically if you get team wiped. After the respawns are used, they'll move to a 2-minute cooldown though, so it can pay to dodge and weave as opposed to just fighting to the bitter end every time. Just do your best when you re-enter battle to land your drop pod on the enemy who killed you for some sweet revenge. One game that I played recently in this vein that didn't quite hit the spot for me was Darktide. I love the Warhammer 40k universe, and initially I was really on board with the setting. After a bit of time, it just felt way too samey. But the variety of missions, along with the 2 enemy archetypes and a variety of planetary locations, really helps Helldivers avoid that pitfall in my opinion. As you level up, you'll be able to unlock different levels of difficulty. It starts quite gently, but then it ramps up with more spawns of tougher enemies that will take more specialised weaponry to bring down or more skill to evade. Obviously though, with higher risk comes higher reward in the form of more experience and loot. Plus, blowing up some of the giant enemies is just incredibly satisfying. While you deploy to each fight with a primary 2-handed weapon and a pistol, these aren't your only tools for taking up in battle. Stratagems are a system for calling down support from your orbiting destroyer. There's a lengthy list of nearly 50 options to unlock, ranging from heavy tertiary weapons like machine guns, to orbital barrages and airstrikes, to turret emplacements, to backpack upgrades like shields or drone weapons. But each Helldiver can only carry 4 of these into battle, and you can call on them by accessing a menu on the control key and tapping in the code. Initially, this can be a bit of a pain to get used to, since you have to stop moving while you enter the code, which can get quite complicated during fights. But it's one of those things that becomes second nature after a little time, and I feel the learning curve on this one is done really well, with the early unlocks having pretty simple codes, while more powerful stratagems that you unlock later get gradually more complex. Now, progression to my mind can be a little bit overwhelming at first, as there's quite a lot going on in the game, and while I benefited from having friends who'd geeked out more on it in the beginning, I do worry that if you didn't have this, then it wouldn't be massively clear to begin with. And part of the problem with that, to my mind, is the sheer amount of what I would call currencies that they've put in. Just for a quick overview, completing missions will get you medals, and these are used to unlock items in the standard battle pass that everyone who buys the game has access to. This will let you get your hands on different primary and secondary weapons, new armor sets, grenades, boosters, and cosmetics like capes and emotes. You can also get some super credits through this. And super credits are the premium currency. They can be earned through the battle pass or found on missions, or they can be bought in the cash shop. You can use these to unlock some other armors in the rotating store, or open up the premium battle pass that has access to some cool incendiary and explosive versions of guns, and nicer looking armors and cosmetics. There is a little bit of an element of pay to win in this, in that the incendiary and the explosive weapons are a bit more powerful, but it doesn't bother me too much, particularly considering this game's PvE. So if this was PvP and some of the better weapons were locked behind a further battle pass on top of a one-time purchase, then I wouldn't necessarily be too happy about it, but given the setting, it doesn't bother me too much. Requisition slips are also earned via missions, and you can boost the amount you get by completing side objectives. These are used to unlock new stratagems in the ship terminal on board your destroyer. It can be worth taking a look at what stratagems unlock at certain levels and planning a bit, since it sucks to get to the right level for a cool strat you wanted, only to realise you wasted your requisition points. And finally, I think, samples come in 2 forms, common and rare. These are used to unlock modules, also in the ship terminal, and they act as buffs to different stratagem types, reducing cooldowns or giving you extra ammo. Samples can be looted during missions, but keep in mind that in order to get them to actually count, you need to make it out alive holding them. This is where it can pay to focus on a certain area. For instance, I've unlocked a lot of the Eagle airstrike stratagems, so I want to get the modules that reduce the cooldown times on those, while my friend Kel has prioritised sentry guns, so he wants the modules that give those more ammo. Still, having said that, don't get too hung up on these things. You can always just go and spread some more democracy and get some more loot. One thing which I think does need to be highlighted about the progression is that a lot of it is sideways as opposed to straight up power creep. Weapons and stratagems are different as opposed to necessarily better. Some airstrikes might be a bit more powerful than others, for instance, but then they're balanced by having a longer cooldown time. A shotgun might be more powerful than an AR, but it suffers from range and reload time. This does mean that if you've got friends who play different amounts, you can still play together. You can still be the lowest level player in a mission and feel like you're making a difference and contributing, as opposed to just getting carried. This was always a big issue for me in some of the other PvE games I've played, as some of my mates would get way ahead of the curve while others would lag behind depending on the amount of time that we had free to play. Then it really sucked when you just installed a new game all your friends are raving about, only to find out that you had to play alone with no real hope of catching up because you couldn't play on the same missions as them. I think it is worth looking at whether or not this is a game you can enjoy solo, since I know from my time covering Star Citizen that a lot of folks prefer the lone wolf style, and the answer is a firm yes and no. Some missions are possible to do completely on your own, particularly if you choose the right gear, bringing in additional support turrets to help you out in a pinch can certainly help. However, a lot of the game's objectives are built with teamwork in mind. Trying to enter a code into a terminal seems really easy until you're getting your ankles bitten by bugs every time you try to tap it in. And having to go back and forth between a terminal and a radar dish to see if you aligned it right is a total pain. So thankfully the game makes partying up really easy. You can quick play to join someone else's squad, or you can wait when you launch a mission to see if the game will auto-assign you some teammates. Once in a mission, you can even throw down an SOS beacon via your stratagems to signal that you would really benefit from some help. Helldivers also has a pretty good in-game VoIP system, so as long as you set up your mic and voice activation or push to talk, comms with random teammates can actually go quite well. But in quite a similar way to SC, the game really comes alive when you've got a few mates to play with who you actually communicate and strategize with. This is where you can select complementary loadouts and stratagems, as well as getting a few insane laughter moments when you accidentally bring an orbital barrage down on your friends. So to round this video out, I think if you enjoy shooters, and particularly if you've got a couple of friends to play with, then I can heartily recommend this game. It's honestly just good, clean fun. Well, okay, it's not necessarily clean, but it is still fun. And I think with the right level of variety and ongoing support from the devs, who are certainly aware they've got a winner on their hands, there's likely to be a decent amount of longevity to it. I don't necessarily think I'm going to get thousands of hours out of Helldivers in the same way I would an MMO or a survival game, but for a $40 purchase, I think it holds up in the fun to cost ratio department. And for my regular Star Citizen viewers, I think it's a perfect game to play alongside something else that takes more of a time investment. There are times when I've got 30 to 40 minutes to play something, in between taking the dog for a walk and dinner. And by the time I fire up SC, get out the station in my ship and cruise on over to Yella, I've maybe got time to run a couple of bounties or crack a single rock. Whereas with something like Helldivers, I'm just straight into the action and covered in gore in a matter of minutes. So I think in that way it can be really quite a complementary option. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video and you think I earned it, then please do consider dropping a like and hitting subscribe. And maybe if you found this vid more because of Helldivers itself, then consider taking a look at some of my other Star Citizen vids. More sci-fi is always a good thing in my book. And let me know what you think down in the comments. Have you already been out bug hunting, or are you thinking of giving it a go? And what other games are you playing as well, so what's your fill-in game while you're not playing Star Citizen? But with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.